Hey everyone, and welcome to SharePoint Power Hour by Rackspace. Laura Rogers is out at the MVP Summit in Redmond this week, so we are taking the helm in her stead. All the faces should be pretty familiar by now, though. Like my lower third says, I'm Corey Emmons. I work at Rackspace as a SharePoint developer. Been doing SharePoint for about 10 years. Um, and I'll get you introduced to the rest of the team, and then Kevin will take it away doing metadata. So we'll go in my order because I get to pick. Woohoo! We'll do Tavis, then Tonya, then Steven, and then end with Kevin. So off you go.
Hello everyone, my name is Tavis Lovell and I am the business intelligence developer on the SharePoint solutions team. So our business solutions team, I guess it's called. So I deal with things like reporting services, performance point dashboards, Power Pivot, things along that nature.
Hello, I'm Steven Wilson. I'm the admin type guy, so I don't do a lot of business services in general. I just do some of the beginning stuff after people have gotten SharePoint first up and running. I help out with installing SharePoint if you're not at Rackspace. If you are with Rackspace, sometimes I help with some of the little extras that people need done when they first get an environment running in the admin side of things, and I might be involved in things like hybrid deployments and things like that. And I've been doing this for, I don't know, probably 8, 9 years, something like that.
And I think that's me. I'm Tonya Kaiser, and I'm one of the youngest SharePoint experience people on the team. So I'm actually in San Antonio, Texas at Rackspace headquarters, or the castle as we like to call it. And I'm the program manager for our internal SharePoint environment. So I deal with the same sort of things that all of my coworkers deal with. My customers just happen to be my fellow coworkers, or rackers as we call them.
All right.
Oh, and I'm Kevin Hughes. I also want to remind you that we are simulcasting on YouTube. And if you are in YouTube, there you go to our SharePoint at Rackspace channel, and you can view this with only a slight delay. However, if you wish to get involved live with the conversation here, you can do so. There should be a link in the video when it first begins to actually join the Google Hangout. And when you do so, you will have the ability to go over to the Q&A and showcase. Anything that we put in the showcase will be some highlight apps or links to things that we think are interesting or relevant. And in the Q&A section, you should have the ability to ask us questions, and we will try to get you answers. We will not be answering them back in text. However, we will try to answer them online. So feel free to be as interactive as you feel you need to be. So at this point, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go ahead and start our demo. Okay, so that's not what I wanted it to have happen. I'll just show it this way. So this is me. I'm Kevin Hughes, SharePoint architect here at Rackspace, and based out of Kansas City. I've been in technology IT field for a long time. I've been working with SharePoint since pretty much its beginning, back before it was actually SharePoint, and it was just called Team Services. Got a lot of alphabet soup, and there's how to get in touch with me if you feel that you need to do so. Today we're going to be talking about, as Corey mentioned, managed metadata, but we're going to talk about it as a global navigation solution. So not just the managed metadata that you may be familiar with in columns, or in the regular term store, but now using it as a global navigation solution. One way that you can do global navigation is, of course, what I call the hard way. So this does take not only a SharePoint admin, but a SharePoint admin that's been given, access to a web front end, and not only the skills but the confidence to go in and edit a bunch of files on the server. Primarily, they would be editing the web.config file, or initially they'd be doing the web.config file and adding a sitemap provider to that, and then they'd be going to add a sitemap.xml file to the 1033 directory in the 15 hive of the web front-end servers, and then they would open up the master page for each site collection and rewrite the code for the placeholder top nav bar to direct to the custom provided that they defined. And then the XML file would look something like that. That would be the format of the XML file for a very simple navigation solution. And so as you see, then anything that needed to be changed, updated, or oops, I made a typo, means that you've got to get that SP admin involved again, and he's got to then go back to the server and rewrite files. It can be quite painful. Then, of course, all the different site collections where you're going to apply the master page would need to make sure that those that any changes are referenced. If you change the location of the file, change the name of the file, or just something went wrong. Additionally, none of these changes would be picked up until you did an IS reset on the server, which would mean that you're going to interrupt user operations for the duration of that IS reset. Plus, since that anytime you do that, it will recycle the user processes in the server's IIS. That means that whoever goes to this site collections next will get a long delay until that first page renders. And so, the user experience there is just not great. Plus, it does take a little bit of skill and a lot of confidence to do this. So what I'm going to show you today is an easy way, and the way I'm going to show you today is not only how to create managed metadata navigation, but how to use it as a global navigation solution. With the ability to use this throughout multiple site collections, many of my clients have had a business need to have multiple site collections, and for security purposes or for or just identity purposes, so maybe they've got regions or sub or offices that they need to have different logos or identities for them, or if they've got particular security needs for HR or finance or so forth, that they really can't let everyone see everyone in all the different sites, so they have multiple site collections. But you want to have a global navigation solution in the top nav bar, and this is one way to do it, and it's the way I recommend. You can have links to any location in this, so it doesn't have to be just SharePoint locations. As I'll show you in the demo, I've got a couple links in there that go outside. And what we're going to use for this is a managed metadata service application. I'm going to show you a couple of ways to get to that. The one way that you just need to be a site collection administrator for, and in one way that actually works. You can because just doing it as a site collection administrator with the site collection term store, it's a lot more work. And I see I made a little typo here. So you're going to have, though, with this, central administration capabilities, which means that you can enforce that global navigation structure. Nobody's going to be able to change it except for whoever is authorized to do so within the central interface. So that means that the global navigation, the top nav bar, can be enforced to be standardized, and just anybody can't go change it. That way you can enforce your governance, which is very important, and you can enforce the user experience through that governance. So enough talking, let's get to our demo. Let me go back and share the proper thing here. So now we're going to see something really weird because you're seeing the Google Hangout. And we're going to show you a typical site collection in our Contoso environment that I've created. And one way that, if you only have one site collection, a way that you can achieve this managed metadata navigation is, if you're a site collection administrator, you can journey to the site settings, and then under the site administration section of your site settings, you can go to term store management. And as you can see here, I've already got a group, a term store group or taxonomy group for this site collection. And within that, we have created a couple of navigation or a couple of terms. We've got a term set called Standards and Policies Navigation. We've got Contoso Main and departments with some subterms. So these can be used for the navigation just fine. I've pre-created these, but I'm going to show you how to get here a different way that is a little more intuitive for some folks. And that is to go back to your site settings and just go to navigation. And when you go to navigation, your default setting on this, of course, is going, unless you're in a publishing site that is already a sub-site, you're going to see structural navigation as your default. And that's fine. That just means that everything on your global navigation area, which means your top nav, is going to be whatever you set it way down in here in the structural navigation, editing, and sorting. However, if we want to do managed navigation, that lets us use our term store. And while you can use the term store for current navigation as well, or use structured for the top and then managed navigation for the quick nav area, you can do both if you wish, but neither of these is going to be available to you unless you have either a site created with a publishing template, meaning like an enterprise wiki or a publishing site, or a regular site like a team site or a community site that has had the publishing infrastructure feature activated within the site collection, and then also the publishing SharePoint publishing server feature activated at the site level, at the site context or scope. So you're just not going to see managed navigation without publishing features. So that's one limitation of this. So if you're going to want to have managed navigation as your global navigation solution, then you must have publishing enabled. I know some folks don't want that to happen in some of their sites. That's the decision you make in your own governance and your own design. So in the managed navigation, actually let me take you to a site collection that okay, so here's a site collection that I have not enabled this on, so I can show you what that looks like. Oh, maybe I have. Navigation. Okay, so here's the That's a sub-site. Let me take you to a top-level site that doesn't have it. Okay, so here's the default setting. You see it's going to be structural navigation, and I haven't changed any of the default settings here, so we're just going to have the structural navigation and editing and sorting show whatever by default any of the subsites or pages that have been created. So if I want to actually make this a managed navigation, then note that I get this managed navigation term set area pop up in the middle here. And then I can actually take a look at what managed metadata terms, groups and term sets are actually available. I can see that because I'm a global administrator here, I can see all these other areas that have been created, and see the term sets that have been created as well. But note that these are gray, and there's a good reason for that. I can't just I can't choose a group. This is a group within the managed metadata service. I have to actually choose a term set, and that's what this little icon looks like. It's a menu for a term set. And I can't choose just a term. So a term within that term set cannot be chosen here either. So I have to actually choose one, or I can create one. And that's what I did with this site here. I created a term set. And that's why you see site collection, sites archive, or in this case, term set sites standards, because that's the name of the title of the site is standards. And if I wanted to do that for this one, this is the regions site collection. I've already done that. Let me go back here to where was I? Which one was I on? Archive, regions. Guess I've already done that. Okay, so I've already done that. But from here, whenever I have chosen, or whenever I choose to show managed metadata, I'm going to, in this case I have wiki sites. I'm going to see that there is a term set for the site collection already there, but there's no term sets I can use for navigation. If I want to do that from here, I can say create term set, and it's not going to let me because I chose that. Let me choose that. So I'm going to create term set, and it'll tell me it's successfully created regions navigation. Well, that's good, because that's already configured that in a way that is really cool, and I'll show you that when we get to it, when we open up the term store management tool. But if I had thought, well, I want the main navigation, and I choose that, that's when, if I click OK, that's when I get this error message here that says the term set selected is already being used. And that's one caveat that we have with managed metadata navigation. Once you create a term set for use by a site collection, a term set can only be used by a single site collection. So if another site collection is using it, say my main site collection, I cannot reuse that term set through this interface. I would have to create another one. And now I can take it over if I said, well, I want to use that for this one now, and I don't want to use it for main. Then you can say OK, and it'll break the navigation settings for the other site. That would be bad in most cases, especially since it's referencing here that it's being used by our main site, and therefore that means the navigation on our primary site, the home page for a company in this case perhaps, would then break. It would no longer work, and we'll get a big bad error message, and people will be unhappy, and you'll get a lot of phone calls to your help desk. So let's say cancel, And let's go back up here to our manage navigation term set choices, and let's go back and choose regions navigation. Now we can, now there are no terms in here. This is just a term set that we're choosing. We can say OK now, and that's cool. Then we can go ahead and go to our term store management here if we wish. Or we could have, through our navigation interface, open a term store management tool from here, and it'll actually open it in a new window. Either way is going to get you to this exact same page, our term store management tool for this site collection. That's all we're going to get. Now, if you were a site collection administrator, let me show you what that looks like as a site collection administrator, but not a global admin. So here I've logged in as our fearless leader, Laura, and we have chosen our standards and policies, navigation. She created that. And so you see we have contoso main and departments. That's cool. But say we want to have more. We want to actually recreate the navigation we have on our primary site. And let me show you what that actually looks like. I should have showed you that to begin with. So our primary one, we see, we have our contoso main, goes back to our home page. We have departments, which has a little drop down. And departments doesn't actually go anywhere. That's just a header up there. It has no link associated with it. But finance, you see down at the bottom left, we get an idea of or a hover text of what that actual URL goes to. Knowledge Center, and we see we even have another flyout here, or flyout from our drop down. Then regions, we have another flyout. So we do have the ability to do 2 levels here, as you can see. Archive and about our contoso. And so we want this navigation for our standards and standards site collection to be the same as the other one. And we can do that here by building our terms through our term management store. Now, notice that as a site collection administrator, we don't even see what terms are being that were used for our main site navigation, because they were created under contoso navigation. They were created elsewhere. The only thing that we have the ability to do is work with the terms that are within our site collection group. We can't use any of these other things here because, as you notice, even if they're there, they're grayed and not bold black. And by being grayed, that means they're not available for us to edit it. We do not have permissions to edit it as just a site collection administrator. On my other window, as a global administrator, I have that ability, but if all you are is a site collection administrator, you don't have that. So let me show you what this looks like from here. Some of the things that we have in our term set. Now, you look at our group, we can add description. If we want someone else to be able to manage this group, just like any other managed metadata group, we could add group managers, which would give them permission to be able to create new term sets and so forth. And create new hierarchies. If we don't want them to be able to enter create new groups or create new term sets and just want them to be able to add things on the fly, then we could put them as contributors. So, and then of course, if for other use, term site collection access. We just, if we're doing this for like catalogs like we had last week, we can give other site collections access to this term set. Still won't let us have access to it for navigation purposes though. And I'm getting a message that we have some questions, so let me take a look at those.
You're just so hard to interrupt, you know?
I know, because I've got a lot to say and not a lot of time to do it. Can I copy a term set for use in another site? I will get to that in just a minute. So thank you for that question. That is coming up later in my demo. It should not be an issue. All SharePoint is security filtered. I use the managed metadata, and only people assigned to a site can see from the nav.
That one's a
That's not a
response
question.
to one. That's a response to one of the other ones.
Okay. I want certain sites removed from the view of all users, thus keeping them on their main site. Will this be an issue with the managed metadata site collection term set? It may. As Jack said, it should not be an issue, but it might be an issue. Using managed metadata like this for global navigation can make these sites visible, but will not make them accessible. What that means is it won't, just because someone doesn't have access, it's not the same security trimming that you'd see, say, in search results. Or automatically created structural navigation, where if someone doesn't have access to navigate to a location, they don't see the navigation link in either the top nav or quick nav. Using managed metadata, they will see the link in the menu, but that won't give them access to it. Are there any catches with doing a combo of managed and structural? The combination is that, or the catch is that if you use managed metadata for your global and want to use managed metadata for your contextual, like your quick launch, then you're stuck with the exact same term set and group for both. However, doing a combination, I most often use a combination. I'll use the managed navigation for global, the top nav, and then structural for the quick launch area. However, and the other catch is if you want to have a site collection that does not use managed, just don't configure it to do so. And then that's according to your governance or design, whether that's a good thing or not. So I think that catches us up on the questions. Now I'm going to go back to our demo. Feel free to ask more. I will talk a lot and only interrupt when people tell me there are questions I need to answer. Okay, so where was I? So our term store manager for the site collection, that is here. Okay, so we can add more term sets here. So I would create in our term set standards and policies navigation, I'd create a term, and let's see. So we've got contoso main and departments. If we want to do this in line with the same, we'd create knowledge center next, regions, archive, and about contoso. So that's cool. And we can create subterms here. So like for our departments, we have finance, human resources, and so forth. And okay, somebody has come up with a way to hide things. You can restrict viewing of the menu item by making yes, but that won't work for this solution. Thank you very much for that. It will work for term-driven page with friendly URL and target page settings. It does work perfectly if you only have one site collection and you're only doing it the way I'm showing you now. If, however, you want a global site collection, term-driven pages and friendly URLs do not work for that solution. So, and which I'm about to get to. So thank you for that insight. It is good information, and it does work for the way I'm doing it now. So anything that I create here for the finance, navigation, and so forth. Let me go back to showing you some of the structure of this, though. Now that I've got the terms created, and you can create other terms. I'll show you a more fleshed out one in a minute. So once we have the group, one thing that we have to do or make sure of, which isn't an issue when we do it this way, it will be in the proper way for our solution. We have to go to this intended use tab, and I'm sorry I'm jumping around a lot for this, and we have to make sure that this use this term set for site navigation box is checked. When we create the term set through that navigation interface, so our site navigation setting, when we click this create term set for use in navigation, then it automatically checks that box, so we don't have to worry about it. We're not going to be for this using faceted navigation, because that gets into a whole nother area of this that we don't have time for today. We can get into it in another demo. We don't have to worry. If we want, we can make this available for tagging, but it's not going to be set that way by default using this. If we want these elements to use the default sorting order in our menu, we can. If we look back here, let me go ahead and click OK on here, and we see that the default sorting order for our site collection puts things in alphabetical order. So we have About Contoso, Archive, Contoso Main, Departments, Knowledge Center, and Regions. But if we look at our main site, we see that Contoso Main Departments, we have a different order. So if we want to have that, we have to use a custom sort order, and we create this, do 1, then Departments next 2, Knowledge Center 3, Regions 4, Archive 5, and then Contoso, About Contoso would be 6. And that will change up the order. When we go and refresh our page here, we'll see that the elements have been reordered, so into the sort order that we told them to be. And that's cool. But now we have to go to, if we want to then have this exact same navigation, we're going to be going back into our term store, and we're going to be setting the under the general. We can set descriptions and that kind of thing, just like any other term. But for our navigation, once we've checked that box to be able to use for navigation, we have a tab here called Navigation. And if we want, we can have the term be whatever and the navigation node title be something totally different. I prefer to have the term actually be the title. If we want to have some sort of hover text pop up, when someone hovers over that, we can type that, and we can set whether this is usable for global or current navigation. You can leave it default, and that's fine. I've already typed, since these were pre-created, I've already typed in the simple linker header. You can use term-driven page or friendly URL, but and I'll show you what that actually looks like. So this doesn't tell it, really where to go, but the term-driven pages will see what it's going to be doing. So the friendly URL for this is going to be Contoso Main. That's not going to take us where we want. That's going to take us to or try to get a Contoso-main page from within our standard site collection. Well, that doesn't exist. So in order to force that to go back to our main home page, we have to go back to our navigation page, simple linker header. Now, of course, we could, go back to our term-driven pages and say, okay, yeah, that's fine, but I want to change the target page for this term. And we could try typing in our home page. And then we say OK, and we say save, and say, oh, that doesn't point to a page. We actually have to point it to a page here. And so let's choose it. We can browse if we wish. We can browse to see if we can choose a page. But notice we only have the pages available inside standards. We can't go up any levels, so that doesn't help us. We'll have to know what that page is. And as a site collection administrator here, I might not even know what that page is at the home page. Just for S&Gs, we see that this is our home page. I'll go ahead and type that. If you remember that you're supposed to, that you can just go back to your home page anyway because it's your home page. So we can type that in. So, now we can't use this because it's an absolute URL and we have to do a relative URL. We could try to do this. It's kind of old school. See if that works. Nope, that type of relative URL is not supported. So now we can't use the friendly URL for this term. That means that we can't use this term-driven pages option for creating a global navigation solution. So we have to go to our simple linker header. Now we don't have to know what the page is. We can, so if the home page was changed, we're going to the URL, and whatever the home page is, that will be what's there. We could go further and do site pages and so forth, but we're not going to, because we're wanting to make this global, something we don't have to, we don't have to maintain as much. And if we're not in charge of that home page, the global home page, then if they change something there, then I've got to remember, I've got to go back here and change this, otherwise I'm going to get people upset at me. So we save that, and now that actually will work. We can go back to our home page here, and we'll see that our pop-up, let me refresh that just to show you that it's still there. We see down in the lower left, we now have a pop-up main contoso home page for our mouse hover. And we can see that that's going to go to our contoso homepage from our pop-up, our hover text down in the lower left corner. We can do the same thing with departments. We notice though departments is is what we call a managed path. It's we've created that as a managed path. There is actually no site at departments, so we can't use term-driven page or friendly URL here anyway because we just want that to be a header. And if we have a header here with nothing in this blank, then it still shows up in our menu like it does here, but it doesn't go anywhere. You can click that sucker all day and it ain't going to go nowhere. It's just text. However, the items down here, we have actually created simple links or headers. We've put in the location for these because they're going to other site collections. And so we can't, again, use term-driven pages because we can only put in relative URLs that are relative to our site collection. And since we're a simple SharePoint site collection administrator, we don't have access to those site collections term stores. So we can't do anything with them. We can't, we have to enter all this manually. And Knowledge Center, we would, again, that's a new one we added. And that URL is sites. Okay. So that is saved. We go back here. We'll now see that's we'll instead of the term-driven one, which is wrong. We don't want that. We refresh our page, and we see that down in the lower right or lower left corner, we now have the one we want, because it's no longer trying to reference something within our site collection. It's going to another location, and this is all great and wonderful, but it's a lot of manual work, and as site collection administrator, I've got to know where all these go, and I may not have access to some of these sites to even be able to navigate there in the first place. So, but somebody within my department may, maybe I'm in HR, in the HR site, or I've just been given control over the standards and policies, but I've not been given any sort of access to the HR site or the IT site or the PMO site. and therefore I don't know what the structure of that is. So the way this actually comes all together best is that you do this through your central administration term store. And the reason for that is I can create not only all of this ahead of time, but also because I don't have to do everything manually. Now let me show you what I mean by that. What I mean by that is let's go back to our central administration. If from central administration, I go into my application management and manage service applications, find my managed metadata service application here. It just takes me to the term store, and notice that now I can see all of the other navigation term stores that have been created. Can't see the system, the site collection ones though, because those are site collection specific. But that's okay. We're going to go ahead and create everything up in here. Now I've gone ahead and created a group for Contoso navigation, and I've created our main navigation term set for us to use. Made sure to check that its intended use is to use this term set for navigation. I've created a custom sort order for it so that it is sorted in exactly the way I want it to be. And now one thing to note here, if I look for term-driven pages, it says I can do that, and I can, but it's relative to the central administration site collection to do that. So it doesn't, and yes, central administration is a site collection. So it's not going to work for our purposes. Yet again, the friendly set, term-driven pages thing is not going to work for our purposes today. So let's go back to our general tab. We look at our terms. Notice that I've created our terms ahead of time for our main navigation. I'll just quickly go through what these are. Our Contoso main, and its navigation is a simple header with just like we created before. Departments, simple linker header with nothing in it, but its subterms have their simple linker headers filled in. Then Knowledge Center, I've got all these filled in, and I'll get to why these icons look a little different in just a second. Regions, we have, cancel that. Apparently you get that message whenever you go somewhere and it thinks you have saved something, and or you've changed something, and it asks you to save it. It's trying to protect you from yourself, like a lot of Microsoft things do. Notice for the USA, the regions, the USA is blank here. It's just a header because it has sub terms for the different USA regions, but international, I want to keep that the way it is, just USA and international, because I don't have that filled out yet. And archive, got a couple things here. About Contoso has a couple things there as well. And all those, not all of those are filled out. Apparently about Contoso. And notice about Contoso I'm taking to an exact page, but for some of these they're either blank or I'm taking only to the URL without pages, so I'm not specifying an exact page. I'm just going, so that doesn't matter. I'm going to a home page there, but here I want to go to an exact page because this is not a site, it's a page within a site. Same thing with the executive team and history, so and about Contoso as well is going to a particular page. Something else I wanted to show you here. Okay, so I said, this is an easier way. It looks like, from this that we'd be doing the exact same thing. We'd be building it out. Yes, you have to build it out at least once. You can't get around that. However, so I've created another term set here. I want to use this for our HR nav. I go to intended use and make sure this, if I just create another term set, let me show you what happens there. I want a new term set for IT nav, let's say. Notice the intended use, that box is not checked by default when I create that because it's just a term set. SharePoint doesn't know what you want to use it for if you just create a term set. But the HR nav I do want to use as a term set or a navigation for navigation. So now what I can do is go through here just like I did before and create new terms and recreate this. However, I don't have to. Notice when I click the pop-up here, I have the ability to not only create term, but copy a term set, reuse terms, pin term with children, or move term set. Or I can delete a term set if I want to. And what, let me quickly, for those that aren't familiar with this, I'll quickly go through these. I'm going to go through them out of order. Create term set term, we've seen that already. Move term set, that means that we're moving their term from one group to another group. Copy term set means that we're going to take one of these term sets and copy it and then rename it. And that might be what you think would work. And yes, it will work for this purpose. However, it does not, it's going to create more work for you. It creates the terms, but not their configuration. So, any like this navigation, the simple linker header will end up being blank. That's no different really than creating it brand new. Reuse terms, that is going to be the icon that we're going to see. But reuse terms is not going to give us the ability for us to use them again in navigation because we still need a whole nother term set. What we really need is to pin a term with children. Because, the reuse terms, if we say reuse terms and we go to like our knowledge center term, which has children underneath, and even children with with children and children underneath that, the reuse terms is only going to copy this first one, and then we'd have to go through each one of these and copy each one of these. What we're going to do though is pin a term with children, which is going to allow us to go to our main nav, copy this one, doesn't have any children, and by pinning the term, what we get, as we can see, is navigation has all our configurations still there. So we have copied it and maintained our configuration. We haven't just copied the term. We go back here, say pin term with children, and go back here and choose departments. And we see that not only have we gotten departments, we have also gotten its children. And if we look at the navigation, we have all the navigation settings as well. And we continue to do that. Pin terms with children, we've done, let's see, we did departments, do knowledge center. Quickly go through here, regions. Notice as we pin these, our icon changes to it being a term that has been reused. So that tells us that the reuse, but what we did it by pinning it. And we're going to pin term with children again. We did regions just now, so we'll do archive. And we can also see that in this is also good that if we forget where we are, we can see, oh, we've used these, but we haven't used about contoso, so we'll use that. All right, so now our HR nav is ready for us to use in HR. Oh, there's HR. There's our human resources site. I know I hadn't built it out. This is just for demo purposes. Did put an icon there so I know where I am easily. Go to our navigation. And all we've got to do is choose Manage Navigation now. And this can be done by any site collection administrator. and choose HR, and like we did here, and we say OK, and notice that now we have all our terms, but they're out of order. What did we forget to do? We forgot, or we didn't realize, maybe when we first started this, or I haven't told you yet, but we didn't realize that when we do this, we still have that same default sort order of a new term set. So what we have to do, whenever we create these new term sets, we have to sort it the way we want, and that means putting contoso main first, and then departments second, then knowledge center third, and then our regions next as fourth, archive is fifth, and now we go back to our global nav. We'll refresh our page. Sometimes takes up to a minute for this because for the timer job to do. Oh, it says improperly attached. What does that mean? That means that somewhere along the lines things have screwed up because it's an error. Very likely what that means is that the term set group, I'm glad this happened, it means that the timer job kicked this off and it has not had a chance to replicate before we're trying to get to it. But if this continues, what it means is that this HR nav is either being used by somebody else, some other site collection, or it means that some sort of configuration in this term set has changed that the managed metadata navigation doesn't in the site collection doesn't know how to handle. Very likely it's that we changed the sort order because it worked before we did that. So we can go back to this and we'll check that out just by making sure. Let's see if that helped. We're getting different correlation IDs, but other than that, nothing is changing. So in that case, we screwed that up, which is a very common thing. I have it happen more times than I really want to admit. In which case, I'll show you how to get rid of that. We go back to our managed navigation. We pick structural navigation again. Say OK, which now we get our back to our structural. Go back to navigation, managed, and this time instead of leaving it here, you'd think we could just click on it. Now we got to choose something else first, which means it's a good thing to have another one chosen there, and then come back to it and re-choose it. But before we re-choose it, let's do our sort order. I know I'm moving around, but you get the ability to rewind this, so I'm not going to slow down too much. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. And I saved it. Okay, save. So now we go back here, we'll go HR nav, and we'll choose that. And now we have our navigation. So a couple of gotchas there, but that was much quicker than doing another one for human resources. And I also don't have to worry about everybody getting it right. What we have here, we have our HR. Let's say we have our knowledge center that we want to use. It show you again how quick this is, or we did our IT nav. So let's go to, come on. Oh, that's right, it's not sites, because remember we made that as a, I need to spell, departments IT. And I don't want to share this. Clicked on the wrong thing. So we did our IT. Let's pin term with term set. Go back to our main nav, contoso main. Pin term. Departments. pin term. I know I'm running out of time here. I want to leave time for some other questions if people want. So let's just go ahead and leave it that way. And now that we're in our IT nav, we'll use a custom sort order. That's actually what we want anyway, so we'll say save that. But we have the sort order or custom sort order chosen, so it shouldn't screw up when we add more things. Go to our navigation and IT, manage metadata navigation. We choose IT and say OK, and now we have our global navigation here. So it's that easy to replicate that, and as a site collection administrator, if we use this solution, then we don't have to worry about when things change globally. The only thing we have to worry about is if we added another, let's say to our main nav, we added another term that is, let's say, external stuff. Now we want to make sure that that is intended for navigation. So we go to external stuff. It is, but what do we want it to be? I just want it to be a header right now. We'll put a link in later. Since I don't have anything there, we can always put a link in later, but I want it to show up in the menu. So we go back here, and we'll see our external stuff showed up. There's nothing there, but it won't show up in HR. It won't show up in our IT because we have not added it to those term sets. We do that by going back to IT, pin term set from our main external stuff. Same thing with HR. So it's a little bit manual, but not nearly as difficult. Pin term from main and external stuff. And just to confirm our sort order, external stuff is 7. That's cool. It added it where we wanted because we're already using a sort order, a custom sort order. So that means when we go back to our contoso main, not only do we have external stuff, we go to HR, external stuff shows up, and in our IT, external stuff shows up. So we now are enforcing that on a global scale. All we've had to do is configure that once, and through the central term store, you see how easy it is, how quick it is once you set up your main nav. Creating these others is super quick, and making them, configuring them for use in the actual sites is super quick as well, especially if you're a global administrator. Your navigation, choose managed, choose a term set that is available for you to use. It's gray here, which means I can't, so it means, oh, I got to create another one. And then any changes that are made from this global level are automatically propagated down to the other site collections. So that's our global navigation solution. It's actually very easy. It does take some pre-planning, but it can enhance the user experience. And I wanted to show you that not only is this multiple levels for navigating to sites upon subsites and so forth, but also have these. You can have this go to an external location. This goes to Microsoft. This one goes to Rackspace. So it's not limited to SharePoint, where the term-driven navigation links are. And remember, those are limited to only the relative locations within a single site collection. This, you can make it look like anything. And the other thing about this, since it just is the regular top nav, it'll take on whatever custom branding you apply to it. So if you're going to brand the crap out of this location, go for it. It just takes the regular CSS styles and the regular master page controls that you would normally use in a publishing site. All right, so that takes us back to, I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see if there's, we've had some difficulties with showing this apparently.
Yeah,
I hope it shows up in the recording.
We'll find out. I was hosting it and I happened to lose internet about 10 minutes ago. So that might have screwed it up. We'll find out.
Comment out on YouTube telling them that Kevin will redo it all again tomorrow.
No, I got people that pay me to work tomorrow. So,
All right. Well, in any case, hopefully this will be recorded and we'll go from there. But since it's now been an hour, I guess it's time to say au revoir. So
Bye.
goodbye and join us next week.